Thank you so much. I think I got this alarm. I may have hit snooze. It may go off. I hope it doesn't. But hi, everybody. I am Mary. I am a food addict, compulsive eater. I'm in Sarasota, Florida. As you can tell, I'm not in Omaha, Nebraska. You guys are bundled up in your coats, or in Nebraska, wherever you guys are. And it's great to be here. Thank you, Chiwendo for inviting me to share. I love sharing my experience, strength, and hope with others because this program has absolutely saved my life, without a doubt. And Chin, I have 20. Did you say 22 minutes?
You want a timer or you got it yourself?
I've got it if that's right, because then I'm gonna write down on my computer what time I have to stop.
Okay, sounds good.
Is that okay? All right. So I'll stop at 53 after. Um, yeah, God, I've been in OA since 1985, and I've been absent in OA since 1990, January 21st of 1990. And I've been to a lot of meetings. I figured out the other day how I've been to well over, I think it was over 3,000 OA meetings, because I usually go to a minimum of 2 a week, no matter where I am in the world, and literally in the world. And it saved my life. And I can tell you that without any hesitation and without any doubt. I came to OA in 1985. I spent the next 4 years in and out of relapse, a little bit of abstinence, a little bit of, back in the food. My top weight was 340 pounds. I'd like to share the screen. Chin, I have some pictures.
Oh, sorry.
Aha, there it is. Okay, share. Okay, now can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, okay, good. So this was me when I was about 2 years old, little girl, little blonde girl, only picture I really ever liked of myself. From then on, probably by about the age of 3, I started gaining weight. And as you can see, when I was 13 years old, and in these two pictures, this is when I was at my 8th grade graduation. I was about 270 pounds in those pictures. In When I was in I was constantly gaining or losing weight. These were a couple of camping trips that I was on when I was in my early 30s. And these two pictures at the bottom of here, these are when I was in treatment for the first time. I was 34 years old. Then I was in treatment in 1986 for my food addiction. I've been in treatment twice, and this is the first time. I'm 72 years old now. And so this was, half of my life. So anyway, so those are some before pictures of me. And stop sharing. That's right. Okay, good. Um, I came into Overeaters Anonymous. I had been an overweight child. I had been an overweight young adult. Um, I was morbidly obese. I didn't know what was wrong with me. Going to school and being out in public was very, very, very painful. I was teased and bullied kind of ruthlessly, and many times was very depressed. I was a person that was smiling on the outside and dying on the inside. I still smile a lot on the outsides, but I will tell you, my insides match my outsides way more these days than they ever did when I was back in the food, when I was in my disease. I did not know. I thought my only problem was that I had a weight problem. And I thought that if I just dealt with the weight, I would be okay. I'm a good dieter. I've lost 100 pounds at one time, 5 different times. So I know how to restrict food. And but as the disease progressed, my periods of controlled eating became shorter and shorter. I've been reading, for my reading and writing assignment, I'm going through the stories in the back of the big book, because I read and read something from the literature and write every day and share it with my sponsor. And I've been reading the stories in the back of the big book lately, and there's one quote from it's page 340, and it's from Because I'm an Alcoholic. It's about a woman. It's a woman's story. And it says, alcohol had enslaved me. I was in bondage to it. Although I kept assuring myself that drinking was a pleasure and a choice. And that is the insidious nature of addiction. And for her, it was alcohol. And for me, it's specific foods. I call myself a food addict. I usually don't refer to myself as a compulsive eater. I think compulsive eating, compulsive overeating, overweight, underweight, are all obesity, diabetes, depression, many things are symptoms of my addiction. But I am an addiction. I'm an addict. There are certain foods that I cannot eat in moderation, no matter how hard I tried. I really did think that that the food was giving me pleasure and that I could control it and stop whenever I wanted. I just didn't want to. I just didn't want to. I really enjoyed eating. I never did want to give up my food, ever. I loved my addictive foods. I loved them. They were more important to me than anything in the world. They were my higher power, my go-to, I've heard it said in the room sometimes that, our higher power is whatever we go to when we are in need of comfort, when we are having feelings that we don't know how to deal with. And that was not another person. It was not a higher power. It was a higher power in the form of a bakery box and a bag. And that was what I went to when I was in pain, and I was in a lot of pain. But I don't believe that I ate because of the pain. It just did I have a lot of pain? Did the food help to soothe my emotions, my pain, my fear, my anxiety, my depression? Absolutely. But I believe that I ate because it worked. It was there it goes. I have a brain disease, and just like with alcohol affects the brain and actually changes the things in the brain when an alcoholic drinks alcohol. And there's been so much scientific proof around food that it does the same thing with food. And so I believe that I had a chemical dependency on certain foods. And in the doctor's opinion, it talks about how the only thing we have to suggest is entire abstinence. And so I've often heard in the rooms, it's easy for alcoholics. They just don't have to drink. It's really easy, but it's hard for us because we have to eat. I have to eat. But you know what? The way I look at it, alcoholics still drink. They still drink. They just don't drink alcohol. And I still eat. I just don't eat the addictive foods that set up a physical craving in me and a mental obsession. And I first went to OA in 1985. I was given a food plan. I couldn't stick to it for even one day. I thought it was kind of weird that they talked about God at that meeting that I was at. Have a scale there when you walked into the room. I thought, well, this is weird. I liked it. I liked that there was no scale, but I thought it was odd. I liked the group. I had been also to the group that met across the hall, that when I went to that weigh and pay, I don't like to mention specific food programs because they work for certain people. But when I went to that one, there was 1 week that I went in and I had gained weight from week to week, and they put a piggy sign around my neck. And during the meeting, I had to wear the piggy sign. And do you know that actually made more sense to me than going into a group of Overeaters Anonymous and not being given a food plan and not being weighed and not being talked about diets so much? That made sense to me because I really did think that I was just a pig. What was wrong with me? Thought God had made me. Honestly, I used to think that God made me to be the fat bearded lady in the circus. That was just what I was to be. I spent the next 4 years between 86 and 90 in and out of relapse, not being able to maintain any kind of sustained abstinence. I went to an OA meeting in 1990, and I found out about a treatment center that treated food addicts. And I called there, and I didn't know where I was calling. It was an 800 number. And I called, and they said, this is what I said to them. I said, you know, I can't stop eating. I need to be locked up. Do you know any place like that? And they said, well, you've called it. And I said, where have I called? And they said, well, you've called a treatment center in Naples. And I thought, oh my God, I called Italy. I had no idea there was a Naples, Florida. I was living in Chicago at the time. I was so embarrassed that I had to go away. I chose to go to inpatient treatment. I was so embarrassed that I had to go away to get help because I could not put the fork down because I was so overweight and couldn't stop eating. I didn't tell my friends where I was going. I, I was too embarrassed and ashamed. I did tell my family I was not able to work at the time, so that was not a problem. And I went into a treatment center that was 12-step based, not a 12-step program, but 12-step based, and talked about food as an addiction. They treated alcohol and drug and food addiction. And I was there for 7 weeks in inpatient treatment. I went in at 340 pounds. Those pictures that I saw, those final 2 pictures I showed you, those were taken at the treatment center. And I really worked hard. I worked really, really hard. And this was in 1986. And I skipped a step. That was in 1986. And then I spent 4 years in relapse, in and out of relapse. And in 1990 is when I went back to treatment. I had learned a lot in my first treatment center, but I also had come to I was losing weight. See, I was losing weight. I lost a lot of weight. I lost 140 pounds. And I thought, I've got this because I'm dealing with my only problem. I had no idea that the problem was not just the weight. I have a spiritual disease with mental and emotional and physical manifestations, and the food had to be dealt with in an appropriate manner. And so I had been in touch with with the therapist who I'd had in treatment the first time, and I called her and went back into treatment in 1990, and that was in January 20th of 1990, and I have not binged or eaten my addictive foods since then. And don't think that I'm anything wonderful because of that. This disease brought me to my knees. It, just like that reading said, it mastered me. I was willing to eat, or I was willing to die for sugar. If I can't have sugar, life is not worth living. I'd rather be dead. And I really was convinced of that to the bottom of my toes. I said, I can't quit. I can't stop. I've proven that to myself, so I might as well die. And while I was there, I was doing work on step 1. And I was given the assignment to read the doctor's opinion in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous 3 times a day, every day. And I did that for about 9 months. I read the doctor's opinion every day. That is a very essential and important part of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's part of the basic text. It's like, if I don't get the doctor's opinion, I don't get the fact that my body is different from a normal eater. I cannot eat normally certain foods. I have a phenomenon of craving that is developed, and I have an obsession of the mind that will bring me back to the food if I don't deal with that through the 12 steps. The way I deal with the phenomenon of craving is through having a plan of eating, a food plan that takes out the addictive foods. And for me, I'm also addicted to volume. So I weigh and measure all of my foods. I've weighed and measured every meal for over 35 years. And I've maintained a 205-pound weight loss, but that's only a small part of it. When they got me to step 2, when they started talking about step 2 when I was in treatment, I wasn't too keen on that one either. I wasn't keen on step 1 at all because it meant I would need to live without my first love. But step 2, coming to believe in a power greater than myself, I was not interested in that. I had had a lot of religious experiences in my life. I was extremely angry at God. I was a survivor of clergy sexual abuse. I had just so many reasons why I could not turn my will and my life over to the care of a higher power. Why would I do that? I haven't seen your care in my life at all. I mean, who would make me, what loving God, higher power that I'm supposed to turn my will and my life over to your care would allow me to suffer as I had it as a child in so many other aspects. I was just convinced. Well, they told me what the big book says, and that is that we are 100% hopeless apart from divine help. Not 99, not 98, not 99.9. I am 100% hopeless apart from divine help. And they told me to get on my knees morning and night and pray. And I wasn't too interested in that. I said, thank you very much. I'll try all these other things and all these other things, but I'm not going to do that. And then my first prayer one day, finally, I just said, fine. They were just on me every day, to get on my knees and pray at night and in the morning, and I wasn't interested. And finally, one day I said, okay, I was really, really desperate. And I got on my knees that night, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but I hope this doesn't offend you, but my prayer was, F you, God, amen. And I stood up. And the next morning, that was my prayer again, F you, God, amen. And I stood up, and I did that for several days in a row, morning and night. And then one day I broke out across the bed, just crying, sobbing, saying, if I have any hope of recovery, I need to have a relationship with you. And that has not been an easy thing for me. There is a line in We Agnostics that really has been very helpful to me. And it says, We Agnostics, page 46, it says, we found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice, express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than themselves, we commenced to get results, even though, this is on page 46, even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power, which is God. And so today, when I pray, I can't define God. I don't know. It's impossible. I can't. I don't know. I don't know. There are some people that say they know. No, I don't know. But I know that some power greater than myself has done for me what I could not do for myself. Does that power show up through you guys? Through the meetings, through my sponsor, through the use of the tools, through the literature? Absolutely. Does it show up in, in quiet time, in my writing? Yes. And one of the most magnificent ways it's shown up for me, it's probably for the last 3 years, I've been going to the meeting where I met Chwendu and at the two-way prayer. And it was at that meeting on Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern that I started two-way prayer. And I never really knew much about it. But I will tell you, my first writing in there was like, this is ridiculous. These people are just making, this is just fantasy. This isn't real. God isn't really talking to me through my pen, really. And I just wrote it all out. Everything that came to me, I wrote out. And I will tell you that meeting has changed my relationship with a power greater than myself. I still don't understand. I can't define. I can't comprehend a higher power. I know that a higher power exists because I am abstinent. That is how I know that a higher power exists in my life, because there's no way under the face of the earth that I could do this on my own. And but that meeting has really opened me to, baby, gosh, I would never have thought of that. Oh my gosh. I mean, where did that come from? Wow. Not every week, but most times it's usually pretty profound. And then we get together and we share in small groups of 3, and that's just been really a beautiful, beautiful meeting for me. I know I only have a couple minutes here. One of the things I've learned is that I need to build my life around what I have to do for my recovery, rather than building my recovery around my life. It has to be number 1 in my life, without a doubt. And it is. And that's the way that it's worked for me, one day at a time. I'm also a survivor of relapse, and I really am convinced that the last thing we do in a relapse process is pick up the food. It starts long before that. It starts in my thinking. I don't need to go to that meeting. I don't need to be honest. I don't need to tell my sponsor the truth. I don't need to be of service. I don't need to do that. I'm losing weight. I don't need to do that. And that's what ended me back in relapse. And so for today, you know, I do a lot. I was going to talk about each of the tools, but I don't have time for that. But I do each of the tools. And the meetings that I attend, we talk about the tools and we share about how we're using them. And I want to share, just close with the ending of page 337 in the big book. It's called Crossing the River of Denial. It says, so here I am, sober, successful, serene, some days. Just a few of the gifts of the program for surrendering, suiting up, and showing up for life every day. Good days and bad days. Reality is a wild ride. I've had a lot go on in my life since I've been sober these years. Year and 4 months ago, my husband passed away unexpectedly. 4 weeks ago, my dog passed away. I've had cancer stuff. I've had cancer, not having cancer scares of relapse from cancer. I've had life. I've had life, the ups and downs. Reality is a wild ride, and I wouldn't miss it for the world. I don't question how this program works. I trust in my God. I stay involved in AA or OA service. I'm very active in service. I go to lots of meetings. I do, usually 3 a week. I work with others through sponsorship and being of service, and I practice the principles of the steps to the best of my willingness each day, very imperfectly. And then it says, I don't know which of these keeps me sober, and I'm not about to try to find out. It's worked for quite a few days now, so I think I'll try it again tomorrow. And that is the truth. I don't know which of the things that I do keeps me sober one day at a time. I think it's a combination of all of it. And I've survived enough relapses to know that I'm too scared to not do what other people have taught me to do and show me how to do every day, one day at a time. And so I'm thrilled that to be here with you. And congratulations, Michael, on your 79 days of abstinence. And I don't know about anybody else, but I'm grateful to be in the room with you today. So with that, I'll pass.